Okay. I'm going to call tonight's meeting to order. All rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call is next.
Councilmember Murray.
Present.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Payne Donovan.
Present.
Mayor Matsumoto Wright.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Here.
Councilmember Sonmore. Councilmember Woodard.
Is it not plugged in? Uh-oh.
Okay. Accounted for with the assist.
Testing.
All right. So first on our agenda tonight is public comment. Do we have any public comments? I see people out there.
Tammy Rice. You'll have 5 minutes, and there'll be a light indicator right here letting you know when time's up. If you'll just spell your name and tell us the city you live in.
Amirice. Firstly, I would like to thank you, Mountlake Terrace, sorry. I would like to thank you for this opportunity to share my concerns regarding the 2023 Tour de Terrace events with each of you. As a resident of Mountlake Terrace since 1964, I consider my home physically at the core of the annual Tour de Terrace festivities. I reside 7 houses from the school grounds and track where the carnival site is, and 3 houses from the backside of the tennis courts. My one note of positive feedback for this year's event was that I appreciated the city posting no parking signs on the east side of 54th Avenue, which allowed residents to travel more safely during this 3-day event. And it also gave access for the emergency vehicles to travel more efficiently. There are, however, several points of criticism I share with my fellow neighbors regarding safety, accountability, and event logistics. Since the event's inception in 1994, I have perceived a growing decline in leadership from the founding organizers. What used to feel like welcome summer gathering of family and friends and an occasion for sharing pride in our community and city at large is leaving residents like myself feeling unsafe, frustrated, and disappointed. I feel unsafe when I see during the Tour de Terrace 2022 private citizens with firearms on site. I feel unsafe when I hear that during this year's Tour de Terrace, someone was stabbed, a loaded sawed-off shotgun was seen in a backpack, and a 14-year-old child was stealing from a street vendor. I am frustrated that as a taxpayer, my dollars are helping pay for added police presence during this annual weekend event, and the event security is clearly insufficient and not trained to handle such issues. It is my understanding the city of Mountlake Terrace does not provide any funding or receive any profits to afford what happens here around this event. I am disappointed that there was no accountability when trying to seek help to address my concerns during the Tour de Terrace event itself, chiefly that the permits obtained did not adhere to the end times. When the events on Sunday, July 23rd surpassed the 8 p.m. wrap time, I called the non-emergency line to no avail. I called the organizer number multiple times and I am still waiting a reply. I even walked down to the event at 8:45 p.m., asking several event workers who was in charge and why the event did not end at the 8 p.m. as permitted. When I spoke with Desiree from Davis Shows, she told me that they were wrapping up. Wrapping up should have begun at the time that the last ride was ended at 8 p.m. The lack of accountability and leadership to ensure proper end times also meant that my neighbors and I were subjected to the ongoing noise of the carnival semi-trucks leaving the area at 12:54 a.m., 12:56 a.m., 2:24 a.m., and 2:45 a.m., to which I remained awake until I needed to go to work and get ready at 5 a.m. And I do have those on my Ring camera that went by. Again, 7 houses from the way that they come down the road. For the future Tour de Terrace events to occur with this same lack of overall organization and focus on public safety is untenable. I implore you to take action wherever you can to ensure that our community is respected and safe while it is being celebrated. Thank you.
Bree Berry, you'll have 5 minutes, and the same thing, this light will let you know. Please state your name and the city you live in.
Great. Hi, I'm Bree Berry. I live in Mountlake Terrace, right next to Tammy. Thank you for letting us come here tonight and chat with you. Really appreciate it. So I live right next to Tammy, 6 houses in from the Tour de Terrace event space, and I really do appreciate that Tour de Terrace is a key item in the city's portfolio, and I understand that it exists as an event that is done in partnership with a private family. However, from our experience, me and my family, there's a tremendous lack of consideration for the residents surrounding the event area that I would love to bring to your attention. I'm a mom. I have a newborn baby and a 2-year-old, and we've lived in Mountlake Terrace since 2017. And this year, we had our driveway used for drop-off and pickup continually. People were loitering there, and it was really noisy. Additionally, there was a lot of noise from this event that could have been better managed, a lot of which Tammy said, but I'm just, for the sake of the record, going to share a little bit more about our experience there. So on Saturday night, the event was going very late, so it was after 11 p.m., and I called the number on the Tour de Terrace website, and the gal who answered, quote, told me, "The noise you're experiencing is not my problem. It is solely the responsibility of Davis Shows, and there's nothing I can do to help you. They normally wrap up around midnight. Again, nothing I can do to help you." After this, I walked down to the fairgrounds in my pajamas, which was super embarrassing, but I was trying to find a police officer to register my noise complaint with, and although I was able to find their vehicles, they were off attending to other matters, so I wasn't actually able to speak with anyone. Council members, even with all our windows closed on a super hot summer night, all we could hear was the rides, screaming, yelling of attendees, and it really affected my children's ability to sleep. They did not conclude until 11:55 p.m., and of course it took some time afterwards for event participants to leave. Again, folks were using our driveway. They were blaring music from their vehicles as they drove away and shouting as they walked down our street to get to their cars. It was super frustrating. May I suggest that all events should follow standard noise ordinances and end at 10 p.m., and that would be enforced. The next day, I went to the city's booth at the street fair to try and speak to someone, and was originally told by city employees that Tour de Terrace is a privately run event, and if I had concerns, I should call emergency services. Later, I was actually able to speak to the city manager when I came back, which was very helpful. But I do want to share that you as the city who are in charge of permitting, enforcement, and terms of use for an event like this need to do a better job. It is negligent to not look out for your residents and take care of these elements and then tell your citizens to call emergency services. Later Sunday midday, as I was loading my kids into the car, I saw an altercation between a neighbor and a driver who was going past a road closure sign, and later found out that the cops were called to address him. But at that time, I was feeling tremendously unsafe with my kids. So I would ask that please, we have more police presence if this event continues, that enforces the street closure signs and looks out for public safety during the event. Sunday evening, once again, the festivities wrapped up later than stated on the website, and then Davis Shows proceeded to pack up all their belongings. They were making a great deal of noise with their massive semi-trucks, leaving the premises all night long, as Tammy said, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. This is absolutely not acceptable. I love living in Mountlake Terrace. I take pride in our town, and I'm thankful for all the fun events that are geared at serving our family and engaging our community. We, my family and I, are so grateful for all of you on the council, for your service to us as residents. But can you please do a better job overseeing this event? If the city does not have the resources or the desire to provide necessary oversight, then this event should not continue. Respectfully and thankfully, Bree Berry.
If there's anyone in the online audience who would like to comment, please use the hand raise tool. Going once, going twice. That concludes public comment.
All right, thank you. I just want to say that we can't answer tonight. You just read everything into the okay, great, thank you. City Matt, consent calendar. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to approve the consent calendar items A through F.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And then next is our city manager's report.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Couple things I wanted to mention to you this evening. The first is I believe we have picked our day of service for 2023, and that will be scheduled for September 9th. More details will be forthcoming, but this is a day when we can volunteer to help our community. Another thing that I'm sure many of you will be happy to hear, we have ordered the cutoff valve. We had to special order the cutoff valve for the fountain out here in the plaza. So we've got that on order and it's on its way here. One of the final remaining pieces so we can get that fountain operating the way that it was intended originally. And the welcome signs that were the idea of Mr. Page on the DEIC should be hung this week in the 3 different facilities here at the City Hall, in the police station, and at the pavilion. So that'll be a nice addition to those buildings. Flooring in the police department is completed. We're waiting on the cubicles, and we need to construct the drop down so we can bring the communications lines and the power and everything to meet all those needs in the cubicles. And a couple of things, some very good news. We've started our information technology strategic plan. We had 5 firms apply to perform that strategic planning activity for us. Selected 3 of those firms for an interview, and we had the first interview this morning, and we'll have the next 2 interviews on Wednesday of this week, with the idea of starting that strategic plan about a 4-month process right after Labor Day. So be moving along pretty quickly with that. Wanted to remind council and the community that the public meeting for the Lake Ballinger viewing platform will take place on the 9th, Wednesday this week at 6 p.m. here in this room. And lastly, next week, both Deputy City Manager Hope and I will be in Spokane attending the Washington City Managers Association Conference. We will be virtual, but we'll be attending your meeting on the 17th to provide whatever support we can provide for that and participate in that meeting. And that's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Do we have any questions? Councilmember Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor. Could you clarify the date for the Ballinger platform? Is it Tuesday the 9th or Wednesday the 10th?
Oh, did I get my days mixed up here? It's on Wednesday. So it'd be on Wednesday, the 10th, I guess.
At 6 p.m.?
It is Wednesday the 9th. Yeah, at 6 p.m.
What month is that?
August. Yeah, today, Monday the 7th, Tuesday the 8th, Wednesday the
Okay.
9th, yeah.
All right, thank you much.
Sure.
Anyone else? I guess that's it. Okay, so number 5 on our agenda is the approval of the easement agreement with Millstream. And oh, he's up there. Jeff Betz. All right.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Sorry, I'm back on Zoom for this one, but good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. As mentioned, I'm Jeff Betz. I'm the Recreation and Parks Director for the city. And I'm going to do just a brief summary of the presentation I did last Thursday, but I do want to share my screen for that here. And I'm really just going to show one image right now on the screen, but just to give a summary of what we talked about last Thursday. So this is for an easement agreement for Millstream MLT West. They're requesting to use city property, and that's at the former 59th Place cul-de-sac. And this easement would allow soil anchors to be installed onto city property. So that proposed easement is currently being used as a temporary parking lot by Sound Transit during construction. And Millstream MLT West does plan to construct an 8-story mixed-use development called Candela. And that will have 425 apartments, common amenity areas, as well as ground floor retail. So Millstream proposes to install these soil anchors, and it will provide additional support to their north wall. And that was previously installed by Sound Transit for their temporary parking lot. Soil anchoring, as I mentioned before, is a common construction technique for soil slopes, excavations, or retaining or shoring walls. So this agreement allows for really just the main idea is they're going to be able to save some money for Sound Transit as well as Millstream by retaining that existing wall. And it's also going to save quite a bit of time for both of them. So those anchors, there are about 400 of them, no more than 400 actually. There'll be less than 400. And they're going to be installed at a 20-degree downward slope. And that 20-degree downward angle shown here in this diagram will penetrate no more than 40 feet horizontally into city property. So that includes a 20-foot city-owned unopened right-of-way and a 20-foot Veterans Park property. So that entry point of the shallowest anchor is 6 feet at entry, but by the time it reaches the park, it will be at least 12 feet deep. So we're back here and wanted to answer a couple council's questions related to last Thursday. I think the council question was if the word trees should be inserted into that easement. And the city's legal counsel did advise that it is fully covered currently with the current written language. And specifically in section 3 of that agreement, the indemnity section, it does mention that and for any and all damage to any facilities of the park caused by installation, repair, maintenance, removal of those soil nails. And then additionally in section 5 under compensation for damages to the park utilities, the grantee does agree that it shall compensate the city for damages to the park or the utilities located therein as a result of the installation or the maintenance of those soil anchors under this agreement. And additional research showed that typically Douglas fir tree roots don't exceed 1.5 meters or 5 feet in depth. The park area where these trees are located and the soil nails would encounter them at least 12 feet deep. So there's the idea and the thought is that these will not be anywhere near legitimate issue, won't be a legitimate issue with those roots. And also, as a side note, the city already has performed a tree risk assessment of all those trees in Veterans Park as part of that Transit Connection Corridor project. So we took into account the species, tree condition, as well as the size of each one of those trees. So in the case of any further damage in the future, if there is damage from a soil nail or something like that, then this assessment can help the city in its cause to recoup future damages. So that is all I had for this quick update and summary. I'd like to take any questions from council now if you have them. I can close this if you'd like.
Are there any, who had their hands up first? Go ahead, Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Jeff. Really appreciate you coming back with some additional information there. Obviously, we know that our residents really value the trees in Veterans Park, and just appreciate the additional due diligence to, do everything we can to ensure, one, that we don't expect there to be any impact to trees, and to your point, that our contract does fully cover if there were to be any impact, us seeking recourse for that. So appreciate the extra eyes and the extra review, and you coming back and sharing that with us, and with that feel very good about moving forward. So thank you.
Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor. I echo the same sentiment. Thank you, Jeff, for your work. I had a question, though, and I just can't shake this feeling, so I think I want to walk cautiously but phrase it this way. So my understanding is this is a retaining wall when it's all said and done. Is that fair to say? It's a retaining wall.
Well, there already is a retaining wall there. There's a wall built, and these nails will go through the wall, and they will apply another structure up against that wall with drainage in between them. So that wall currently serves as a retaining wall, and they're going to preserve it and reinforce it.
Okay, so I'm going to go with yes, because the wall that's there was supposed to come down. We established that last time, and now it's going to stay. And the remedy is to put the nails in, so that's their upgrade, if you will, to a wall that I can't shake the feeling that wasn't supposed to be there in the long run. So again, we're putting the nails in to kind of make it more stable or whatever the reasoning is. But my real question here is, so if it's a retaining wall, who's responsible? And I do mean economically speaking. We'll get into the emotional, the spiritual, any of that later. But just economically speaking, if that wall stops retaining, who's responsible for that? We agree to this. It stops retaining. What's our liability?
They are responsible in this easement agreement. So the wall will be on their property, but the nails are going to travel through our property. And that's the reason we're here, is because those soil anchors are going to be traveling through city property, and they're responsible for those as well, the soil anchors. So if anything happens to them and they need to be detentioned and removed, or if there's future development, who knows, that'll be their responsibility.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? What are the council's wishes? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to authorize the city manager to sign the easement agreement with Millstream MLT West.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Can we just go to call for the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, so next is the review and approval of the body camera contract with our police chief.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem. For the record, Pete Cobb, Police Chief. I have with me Commander Mike Haynes. We're here to talk to you briefly about the body-worn camera project. Some months ago, if you recall, we came before you to first introduce the program, and you authorized some money for that. I'm here to tell you that it came in well under budget, which is always a good thing. And I will let Commander Haynes, which is his project, speak to it at some length, and we'll both be here to answer questions should you have any.
As Chief Cobb just stated, Council recently approved funds to implement a body-worn camera program for the police department to work in combination with our vehicle-mounted cameras. The need for a body-worn camera program is primarily motivated by the reality that the majority of work performed by police officers is outside of their vehicles and thus is routinely not captured by the vehicle cameras. The body-worn camera system is the solution to eliminate the gap in our video evidence program. Body camera technology has improved significantly in recent years, becoming increasingly relevant in standard equipment in modern policing for a variety of reasons, such as providing law enforcement the ability to capture valuable evidence, allowing for a heightened level of transparency within the community, ensuring increased accountability for both officers and the individuals that we interact with, serving as a deterrent for violence and protection from unfounded complaints and frivolous litigation. Over the past few months, staff has researched body cameras extensively and have concluded that Axon Enterprise Incorporated is the sole provider for the solution required to meet our needs in order to implement a successful program. Axon has become the industry leader in body-worn cameras by offering an equipment package that is unmatched in terms of technology, quality, durability, reliability, and superior customer service. Staff recommends council authorize the city manager to sign the purchase agreement with Axon Enterprise Incorporated as the sole source body camera systems provider for the Mountlake Terrace Police Department. Is there any questions?
Are there any questions or comments? Councilmember Woodard?
Thank you, Mayor. Once again, I always want to take an opportunity to applaud our leadership, and in particular in this context to say what a wonderful and powerful statement to be adding to transparency, especially in this time and day and age when people think that we're trying to hide things from them, and yet I would argue the resources that you have been requesting, which includes the bicycles, have been all about accessibility and tightening up the process of what we call policing. We can get into whether or not we should or shouldn't in another day, but in this particular instance, just again want to say thank you for being transparent and very forward-thinking and filling out gaps that might not have been perceived as gaps back in the day. So thank you for that.
Councilmember Salmore?
Thank you. I'll go off of what Councilman Woodard said, gaps, but first I wanted to be thankful that we had those funds to get you those cameras. A lot of times people think that police don't want the cameras, and actually I think it's actually to a benefit for officers to carry cameras for most of the time, which goes into the gap that as council members we don't see some of the video that you do get from those cameras, and I'm hoping at one point that you could bring those in. I've talked to some people on them that you can bring them into court, but a lot of times, how do I say this delicately, some people are not taking responsibility for their actions, and you can see those on the camera, and you can see what the police are dealing with. And since I'm on my soapbox, I'd really like to have an agenda item or something that would come up that would really educate us on what the police can and can't do, what you can do with a felony. If you see a car leaving a possible burglary, that you can't pursue it. There's all different things. I know the legislator tried to make some changes, but we're not very good at what they could have done to help protect the people of Washington State. So I'm hoping, and AWC has not come through with helping us, I don't think, enough on that. And so I'm hoping our city, which you two could help us with, educate our council and let us ask questions on what you used to do and what you can't do anymore and what has changed and how can we make it better. We just heard about Terrace and people not feeling safe at these events. We've had, like she was saying, there was rifles there were stabbings there. Last year we had incidents. Years before we've had incidents. And I think these are precursors to something actually happening. And so if we're educated as a council on what the police can and can't do, then hopefully we can educate our legislators in Olympia on what we really need and what our citizens are begging for. A lot of times we think it's all maybe about profiling or we think it's about this, but where I'm coming from, it's about the safety of a person, and it's about what we can and can't do, and what we've taken away from our police officers that aren't allowing our officers to protect our citizens. And the other thing that I'm on my soapbox about is that responsibility issue. If we make those rules looser, who finds out about those first? Our criminals, right? So they're educated on how to get away with a lot of different things, and we're seeing a lot of things changing with law enforcement and police people going to jails and judges. We vote for our judges, and we need to understand what they're doing and what they're doing differently than before. And we're going to be looking at jail cost and things like that. But I think that's something that I know as a council member, I would like a lot more education on, and so I can help correct some of those wrongs that have happened in Olympia that are not allowing us to protect a lot of innocent people that are getting hurt, or deferring people that think they can get away with something, but if they know they're going to have big consequences, and we will come down on, might deter some people in the future. But I'll get off my soap opera, or I keep on saying soap opera, but soapbox, because you can see how rattled I get on the safety issue of all of this. And I've heard a lot of stories lately and been doing some interviews, and I can't tell you how horrible they are. Officers not being able to pursue, but then that car goes speeding by and runs into some grandparents and kills them both. I mean, it's horrific what's going on, and I'm hoping that by educating us, we can educate others and help keep people safe. So I'll stop now, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, but I had to get off my chest, but I just would like to get some more education on that, and then bring back what you're seeing on the cameras. We don't see that. We see CSI. We see shows on TV. I was watching Lincoln Lawyer, and they were showing these attorneys and everything they can do. I know that's not reality. I know that's TV, but to be educated and understand what's going on by the people who are on the ground, instead of us who are sitting on these high chairs and not being exposed to some of the things that you are. We're just here because we want to be supportive of our police officers and just be educated. So don't be afraid to tell us something that you might think we shouldn't hear. We want to hear some of what the things are going on. So I'll stop now, but thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Councilmember Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor. I love the idea with the body cameras, not only for transparency, but the fact that it will have evidence. So when someone says, I never did that, it's on film. So that's a great tool. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you both. I would just echo the appreciation. I think one of the things I appreciate when you come and share very regularly all of the work that you do and what's going on in our community is the consistent looking for opportunities to improve, to better support the people in our community, to aid in transparency, to elicit feedback and incorporate that into the work that you do. And I think this is just another example of you doing that. And I think it's one of the reasons why we have so much trust within our community, in our police force, even from folks who have self-admittedly shared that maybe they have distrust issues, have spoken about how much they appreciate the officers that we have here in Mountlake Terrace. So one, I want to name that I just appreciate this. I'm excited that we did have the funds to be able to invest in this. I think oftentimes there are things we know we want to do, and it's not always easy to find those funds. So I appreciate that we had funds from the federal government to invest in this really important tool. And I do think that it will aid in both transparency and risk mitigation and all sorts of good stuff, which is exciting. And I would just, name, I hear concerns. And obviously we had a meeting where we just heard some very real concerns from our community members that I'm sure we will have continued conversation about as a council. And I will name that by and large, both anecdotally and from a data perspective, our community is very safe. And I know that all of you work very hard to ensure that that is true. And that, I think, by and large, is what I feel and what the feedback that I get from residents. And, so I just want to name that as well. There's always opportunities to address specific issues and to improve broadly. And we want to understand, I think, what those broad theme issues are. But I will name that Mountlake Terrace is a very safe place to live. I think the data backs that up. And I think most people we talk to, share that that is one of the things that draws them to the community and keeps them here. So I appreciate that very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Payne Donovan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Chief and Commander. I'd like to echo everyone's plaudits and appreciation for you and the rest of the Mountlake Terrace Police Department. I do, I've a chance to peruse the materials and appreciate that Axon is very widely used here. I've also had a chance to read a little bit about the cloud services that they offer, and would just appreciate any perspective or concerns that you have about using that service, or if you're planning to use that service. It's been sort of in the media that part of their business model is related to storing some footage on the cloud securely, but there's been some discourse in the media and in the public pertaining to that. So would just appreciate any thoughts or comments you have there.
In regards to the software that's baked into the body camera system, it's actually called evidence.com, which is used by agencies across the country, and it's proven itself to be a pretty outstanding piece of software. It's encrypted from end to end. I mean, from the camera all the way through, it's encrypted. It has probably a much more advanced security system in place than what we have here on our network. So there's really no concern from us in regards to preserving it and making sure that it's kept safe.
Thanks, Commander. Appreciate it.
Anyone else? Okay, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to authorize the city manager to sign the purchase agreement with Axon Enterprise, Inc.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, so next on our agenda is the review of the proposed scope of work for ARPA funding allocated to DEIC. And that will be our Deputy City Manager, Carolyn Hope.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. I'm Carolyn Hope, Deputy City Manager. Glad to be with you tonight. I am here tonight to talk about the scope of work for the ARPA funding that you allocated to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission and associated work. And let me just make sure this works here. There we go. All right, thank you. So tonight, we're just seeking feedback on a revised scope of work and approach to this work. You allocated this money last year, and since that time, staff has gone out with a request for proposals, received some proposals from different consultants, and didn't find them satisfactory. So we've been doing some rethinking about the approach, especially since Jeff and I have come on board, and talking with other staff who have experience with DEI work, talking with consultants in other cities, and just rethinking the best approach to move forward. And we wanted to share that with you tonight and get your feedback. So we'll start with a little bit of a background, discuss the proposal and the timeline, and then get your thoughts on that. So just a little refresher for our community. The council started the DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission in 2020, and listed here on the screen are their responsibilities and roles. And some of those include providing information to the community about DEI, recommending to council opportunities to promote programs and guide our city to become accessible and safe and welcoming for everyone as far as how our government operates and how we create community. and then supporting and challenging and guiding our government to improve the way that we provide business and eliminating all forms of discrimination. So again, last year, City Council dedicated $60,000 of ARPA funds to support work with a consultant on DEI initiatives, and those high-level ideas were related to creating policies, a short and long-term work plan, strategy development, and possibly to pay for event expenses. So just a little bit of information about the work that we've been thinking about. Really, I've been doing this work with different cities for almost 10 years now, and have been talking with lots of colleagues who do this work as well. And I think that it's really important that staff and our commissioners and council come along together, and training is a great way to start that, so that we all understand what we mean when we talk about these terms, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what that means for our government. I know in one of your documents, you also outlined the need to understand our history. The commission is very interested in understanding the history of how Mountlake Terrace has evolved, and what the opportunities and challenges are with diversity, equity, and inclusion. But also, I think it's just good to understand what we as government officials and staff can do to improve our service model. So that is our first proposal, is to do some training, and you'll see that we have sort of a base task and some optional tasks, and that's to see how far our money will go. But the base task here would be to train the DEI Commission, some key staff, up to 20 staff, and yourselves, with some baseline of where we are as governmental agencies in this work. And if we have sufficient funding, it would be great to train all of our staff. That is the ultimate goal, but that might need to come in another budget request in the future. So we will see how far that takes us. The other work that I know was important to you and to the commission was to create a plan. Like, what is it that is a priority for us to move forward? And I think once we understand the baseline of like what it is we do as governments, how we relate to equity work, that can help us understand where there are opportunities and challenges within our service model to make changes. And so the first thing that we would like to do is develop a staff group who's committed to this work, and which would be cross-departmental, because this work is actually in all of our day-to-day work. And that group would help implement the ideas that come forward from the commission and yourselves. So that is really essential to implementation. Also, I mentioned earlier the research work, so that would be part of this, is providing what the history is and planning in our region and in this city in particular, and how that has impacted DEI in our community. And then the last part is to work with the commission and staff to prepare a draft plan for your review and approval. And right now, I have a high-level timeline. This will get more specific once we bring a consultant on board. But basically, we're going to reach out to some consultants once we understand the direction from you. Then we hope to get that person or group on board this fall and move forward with training. And it's possible that the training could happen fairly soon this fall, hopefully, and that we can dive into policy development in coordination with the comprehensive plan, and also thinking about those implementation strategies for the long term. So I am happy to answer questions or discuss any of these ideas further with you.
Do we have any comments, questions? Oh, Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Carolyn. One, just appreciate the intentionality in supporting the work of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission, and ensuring that there is movement towards, and that we're all aligned, I think, in that movement. So appreciate the intentionality in the plan. I would really love to understand if there is not financial resources around training all staff, what that would look like. I think there is a lot of value, I think, to your point, in ensuring that we are all starting at least with a foundational understanding of why we're doing this work and what the work is. It would be really helpful to have all of staff kind of come along in that process together. And actually, I personally would love to do that with staff. I'm not sure how realistic that is, but I will say, I think, again, there's opportunity to learn and grow from one another as well. I guess a question for that piece of the work with the training, because I think, again, to your point about it being a really fundamental part of our work across the board, I'm curious about the inclusion of commissioners from other boards, so outside of the DEIC, given, to your point, like they all have aspects of their work where inclusion and equity is an incredibly important part of what we, I think, talk about when we talk about our vision for our community. So would love to, I guess, hear, is that something we've thought about? And if not, could we potentially see if that's something that we could bring them on board with as we move forward with that training?
I think that's a great idea. And obviously, that and even offering spots for our community at some point in the future is also something that we could consider. I was basically just trying to work within the budget, and I know it seems like a lot of money, but money doesn't go as far as we hope it will sometimes. So I'm also just trying to be realistic. But yes, I totally agree that asking other boards and commission members to come would be great.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. And hear the piece about budget. And I guess that's where, particularly if there is cost savings from doing some of these things all together, I guess that would be helpful to know too. I think while we are cost conscious at all times, if we know that this is training we want to do either way, and we need to figure out and it would cost us less to do it together all up front versus maybe doing some now and some later, and then we'd have the added benefit of getting folks started in that journey sooner. I guess I would love to at least understand what that looks like. And then I guess looking at task 2, just some of the optional pieces of work that I think you lay out really well in the memo. I guess I just, particularly because we are starting to engage in that comprehensive planning process. So one of the optional tasks for folks who don't have it in front of them is to coordinate with the comprehensive planning team, the DEI Commission, and internal DEI staff committee on the development of equity policies for the comprehensive plan update. And I would love to figure out how to move that from optional to included in the process that's ongoing right now. I think all of those things are things I'd love to see us do, but just given the timeline for that work, I think that would be really, really helpful to prioritize. So again, would love to hear more about that as you continue on in this process, and if there are resources needed in order to prioritize that sooner rather than later, what that would potentially look like.
Yes, and I could speak to that one just a little bit. The reason it's optional is we might need to start work on that sooner. We will be doing that work. It's just a matter of whether it's with OTAC only, with who's the consultant on the comprehensive plan, and our community and economic development staff, or if this consultant happens to be on board at the same time and we've done some of the training and there's some groundwork laid there that there could be an opportunity for both consultants to work together, but we're just trying to flush out that schedule.
Okay, super helpful. Glad to know that that will happen either way. And again, just really excited about the intentionality and the work that's going in here. And thank you for that.
Sure.
Anyone else? Councilmember Payne Donovan.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. And Carolyn, great work as always. It's hard to follow Councilmember Murray because she, I think, hit all the right notes. But I will back her up and share that I personally, as a public servant, have had the opportunity to go through a variety of DEI-focused trainings and generally find them of great benefit. And I know there's also a really broad range of trainings out there. And I'm pleased that you've done such a thorough search, and I hope that as Aaron was saying, as Councilmember Murray was saying, we all can sort of think towards the future and look towards funding a all staff training regiment when we have the funds to. And I also echo Councilmember Murray in asking that at least, say, the Planning Commission, especially as we I'd ask for the inclusion of the Planning Commission if at all possible, especially as we speed towards 2025 and our comprehensive plan update and the importance of equity and inclusion in that work. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just excited. Thank you. I'm just excited that we're finally moving forward. You know, we've been talking about this since the inception of our commission, and it is high time that we have a strategy and a plan as to where we want to go and take this. And I'm just excited that we're finally getting there and making progress. I know all of us have a lot of ideas of what we'd like to see and do, and so we're looking forward to working with the consultants and the commission as we move forward and making this all happen. Thank you.
All right, so who's going to go with the recommendation? Am I looking at the right place? Oh, I'm in the wrong. Sorry.
We weren't seeking a motion per se, but just wanted your feedback on the scope of work.
I had the wrong memo opened.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you for your feedback.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so next is the review of the salary survey methodology, again with our Deputy City Manager.
Thank you again for having me tonight. I'm here now to talk to you about the salary survey methodology and just a little background on where we've been with the salary survey this year. Tonight, we're just seeking your feedback on the proposed methodology for the salary survey moving forward. And I'll give you a little bit on the background, the proposal, the timeline, and have time for discussion. So last year, council allocated funding for a salary survey of our non-represented staff. In December, that funding was approved. There had been a survey done last fall internally with an intern that we had. There was some frustration around that, as I understand, and so council allocated this funding to have a professional consultant do some work to validate or come up with a new plan for the survey. It turns out that scope of work was executed in February of this year, and that work was completed in June. And when the city manager and I had an opportunity to review that and the methodology, we found that it really was not an in-depth salary survey. And in fact, we hadn't done a comprehensive salary survey in the entire time that our HR manager has been here in her recollection. So that's over a decade. And so it's time for us to do that. And I'll go through what that means for you here in a minute. And I think that it was really important that we spend some time considering our comparable cities and job descriptions and benefits and making sure that we do a thorough job with this to make sure that we can stand on both feet when we talk about this and feel like we have rationale to back up our decisions. So I have consulted with someone in the business who's been doing salary surveys for a long time. And really, when we think about salary surveys from a best practices standpoint, some of the comparable city data that we look at are assessed value and population. I have to say that when I was applying for a job here, I was impressed with how small of a city this is and all of the services that we provide. And so I do feel like Mountlake Terrace is a bit different. We are in a very urban area. We have a light rail station. We have urban redevelopment. We have a lot of big city things happening in a small community. And I'm not sure that's fully reflected by just looking at AV and population. And I think what happened in the past is when you look at those two things, we were being compared to places like Arlington and Oak Harbor, among other cities in Snohomish County. But I would say those would be outliers when we think about salary. And so some of the things that I started to look at were starting with the cities that are within a 25-mile radius, and then capping that at either end of their populations from 10,000 to 100,000 people. Honestly, those cities would have fallen out after the further analysis that I did anyway, but that just helped in the beginning. We also looked at comparing key services that not all cities have. So things like sewer and water utility, fleet management, our own police force. We hire our own recreation staff. A lot of cities contract that out. And we have a pool with a lot of lifeguards and different staff that a lot of cities don't have. So we really tried to focus on those kinds of services to make sure we have enough comparables within our service comparable cities group. And then going back to the size of our city and the amount of complexity we have within it. And also, interestingly, a lot of our neighbors are, they have property that border either Puget Sound or Lake Washington, where property values are much higher. And so to get at this AV issue, I started looking at the data by per capita. And it really helped since we're only 4 square miles. And we just needed a way to compare ourselves to these other cities that are much larger in landmass and justify why we can compare ourselves to them. So we looked at AV, property tax collection, and sales tax data, because also there's a question about how other cities earn revenue. Sales tax for some cities is pretty significant. So in the end, I compared all of that data, and we looked at where there was common ground among these cities. And we wanted to come up with 10 cities that we could compare to, because we won't get every job from every city, and we want to make sure we have several cities to look at. And the list that we have on the right in the green is where we are right now with this methodology. Before I move on to the next step of the methodology, I'm happy to answer any questions about this part.
I was just going to ask, how do strong mayors fit in too? Because I'm seeing Burien, Edmonds, Marysville, Mukilteo. Did you look at that as well?
We did look at form of government, and there are several that are city manager, council form of governments, yes. Any other questions before I move on? Okay, so the next steps, which we are, we have not gone through all of these steps, so this is just a timely conversation, and obviously we can change things, even the initial analysis. I just wanted to share some work that we had available. The first step is gathering job descriptions, which we are in the process of. And we're gathering job descriptions, pay ranges, and benefits from each of these cities. And then the next step will be to compare the job descriptions to our own job descriptions. And why that is important is because you might know that Association of Washington Cities publishes a salary survey every year. But within that survey, it's a database. And so the description of a job is a couple of sentences. And it's not always the easiest thing to compare job titles. So it's very important once in a while, it doesn't have to be every year, but every few years to look at job descriptions and make sure that we're comparing apples to apples. And so that does take a considerable amount of time, but I do feel like it's very important. There's a lot of variation in job titles. And also just looking at, so we will look at the job descriptions, major tasks, and try to find matches that are about 75% accurate. And also look at their qualifications requirements. So what kind of education experience or certifications a person might need. So once we have that, we will pull those particular jobs into a table for that particular Mountlake Terrace position, and we'll compare the range of salaries and come up with an average. And right now that's our target, and we will do an analysis of the average and bring that back to you and show you where we are and what it would mean to make it to the average. And it might be unattainable for us, but it will give us a target, and we can make decisions from there about how do we get there. And if we can't do it all at once, then how do we get there and what's the first step? So there probably will be positions that are further from the average than others, and we might want to make some more corrections there and find a balance to get to our goal. And the other things that, like I said, we're looking at benefits such as what is the city's match to medical plans? What is the vacation policy or the sick leave policy, and how much of that can be accrued and carried over or paid out? Is there management leave provided? What is the flexible schedule policy? And what are, some of the other benefits that cities are providing, and how do we compare? Hopefully we will be back to you in September, October with some of those draft proposals for you to consider. But that is the methodology for now, and would love your feedback on that.
Do we have Councilmember Sonmore?
I just have a couple. Since you both are new here, can you look at our old data that we did for salary staff and look at how much the budget went up for that? Because where I'm going for this is we all know that there'll probably have to be increases, so we need to know how that will be budgeted into our budget. And then years ago, what we had an issue with is we had people, Will Van Rye Boulevard. I think he was one, and I'm not sure, so don't quote me, but he had been with the city for like 42 years, but we had other people who had been for the city quite a few years, and now we don't have that much, so maybe it's not as big a concern, but they would cash out and we wouldn't have, it would just be a lot on the budget. So do we still have in place where we have funds that we keep available or we contribute to for paying out vacation and sick leave when somebody retires or leaves?
Those are great questions. So one, on the budgeting process, I think when we come back with the initial data, that will be a time for us to consider where we want to be financially. I'm not asking you to make that decision today. I think it would be great to see what the gap is and how achievable that is. We will have time before the end of the year to make a budget amendment if that's the council's desire. I think where we are today is it's extremely hard to recruit because we know we're under market and we're so close to Seattle and King County, who pay significantly more from minimum wage to higher level jobs. So it is a challenge. We're having a real hard time recruiting people. We also as you mentioned, Councilmember Sonmore, we are looking at the vacation accrual policies to make sure that they're reasonable. And we do have a limit right now to what our cash out policy is, but we can certainly talk about that further.
Are we funded so that if somebody does?
Yes.
So we have kept it in there, because I know we were down really low, and then we had talked about having it come back up, so.
Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Carolyn. I know this is a lot of work as somebody who can get really nerdy about compensation and salary grades and all of that good stuff. I think your methodology is wonderful. I think it's intentional. I think the list of comparable cities makes a lot of sense, and actually I think is really helpful as a council member when we think about kind of looking at other things as well, right? Because it's not just salary, where it's helpful to understand what cities are perhaps in a similar space to us. So appreciate all of that work, and I think we are headed a really, really good direction. The only thing, my only just, I guess, feedback or thought to you that might be helpful, at least when I was looking over the documentation, it sounded like we were going to look towards an average of like minimum, mid, and max for each range, but then like base our comparison from our staff average to their staff average. And I guess I would encourage you to maybe think about getting those average ranges in place for us. And maybe you are, so you can also tell me that I didn't quite understand kind of the thought process, but I think finding those average ranges and getting those set based on our comparables makes a lot of sense. And then I think placing folks within those ranges and looking at where their compa ratio is, so where they are at within that range across our internal staff and looking at equity there might be a really helpful way to go about that work as well. Just because actually to Councilmember Sommer's point, maybe we have really senior staff in that particular, like type of position, and our comparables have more junior staff to where the averages perhaps wouldn't make as much sense. So I'd be happy to, I guess, get nerdy another time about compensation, but I guess that would just be one thing I would note that maybe to think a little bit about as you're kind of looking at different comparisons. That might be a helpful indicator as well of where we are at holistically as an organization, is where once we have those ranges that we know are placed against kind of our comparables in the market, understanding where current staff sit within those ranges, in addition to maybe understanding where they are compared to the average at those comparable organizations. So, but very excited and appreciate it. I think we all recognize that compensation is an important piece of why we work, and we want to make sure that we are both able to recruit and retain the staff needed in order to support our community the way that they want to be supported, and the way that we need to be able to accomplish the things that we have set out in our vision. So appreciate all of that work.
Thanks.
Councilmember Payne Donovan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Carolyn, for the great presentation. I'm not an actuary, but I know a few, and I think they'd be proud of you. And I think, frankly, your methodology makes good sense. I'm also interested in sort of the baseline that Councilmember Sonmore requested, just in terms of sort of what our current practices are and where we're at, and if there's any historical information, then great. But I think it'd be helpful for our thinking and knowledge to know kind of what the status quo is, to the degree you can describe it. And then I know you already mentioned benefits. I know we've got sort of state rules around parental leave and other sort of benefits, but would appreciate I'm looking forward to sort of understanding what the sort of spectrum of benefits are out there, because I know that those are really key to retaining folks, and I know that a lot of staff are here because they care about this place, and they know that they're might be getting a few fewer dimes per dollar than their peers in surrounding cities. So I'm really excited for this opportunity to sort of honor their commitment to doing the work to keep city government running, and just commend you for doing such a thorough job. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sonmore.
And I do appreciate what you said, and Aaron's kind of educated me over the years too on salary planning. I didn't get it at first because being in the job market for so long, but now I'm seeing it, and a lot of times you feel a little slated because you had to work all those years to go up in salary, and now a lot of new people are coming in at this higher level, so it's harder to understand. But then you go look at rent and you go look at other things. But one of the things is, do we look a lot at years of service? I mean, is that going to be, and I wasn't sure if I heard that tonight, but I did want to say, even though I'm asking a question, I do appreciate all the diligence that you're putting into this. It's not that we don't want people to have raises, but I think you highlighted some things that I thought were extremely important about being close to light rail. Being a full service city, a lot of people don't realize that we do have a full service city, and we used to have our own fire department, so it was, we're looking, at certain things to contract out, but it's just, if you can just keep us posted and educated on it, and along with Aaron, it's very interesting because I don't work in that area, to understand the newer things that are going on and what causes raises, because the first thing I get concerned about is our citizens wondering why we're raising when our water rates are so high. But they're two different areas. We want to have the best staff that we can have here, and we want to keep them for a long period of time. And so with that, I'll end, but just thank you.
Sure, and I just want to make sure I captured your comment. Were you, when you asked about years of service?
How does that all play in now? Because I know with the cost of living and different things, it's just, when you're looking at the salary range, I'm assuming it's by years of service too? Is that how it is factored in, or is it just beginning, mid-scale, and end scale?
So right now, the way Mountlake Terrace works is it's based on your performance review, and there's a range within a certain position. So say it's 100,000 to 110,000, just as an example. And so if you came in at the bottom, which not everyone does, depending on their years of service, they might come in the middle. And then they have a performance review, and then their supervisor recommends a raise. And that usually has some kind of cap on it based on our policies. There are other ways of doing it, and the city manager and I have briefly talked about different options that we could bring back, but some cities do steps. So every year you can earn a step increase, assuming your performance is going in the right direction. So it's easier for us to budget that way, and it's more predictable for staff. But usually there's about 5 steps, and so by your 5th year working here, you're capped out other than a COLA increase, for example. Or if we do another salary survey, and then in the future that range increases a little bit. So, but in either case, you could max out if you stayed in that position for a few years, because you'll get your, 2 to 5% raise every year, or you're going to do your step increase every year. So
Interesting.
Councilmember Woodard?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm a visual person, so I'm going to ask you to work with me. Can you go back to your methodology first slide? Thank you. And a couple thoughts here. One, I echo everybody else's thought that this is really well thought out. Sorry, it looks very different all of a sudden. This is it, yes. So just want to thank you for that. It's a very interesting looking methodology. I don't know if it's your original approach or not, which is where I'm going with this, but the second half of that is, if ever there was a case for AI technology and its assistance, I'm staring at it, because you were giving me dissertation flashbacks, which was not a good thing. Granted, we're paying you, but at the same time, I can think of a lot of better use of your time. So I'm trying to make sure you have the resources to, quote unquote, be scouring these cities for their job descriptions to see if they line up. And that's very AI related. So just going to put that out there first. If you don't have those resources, how do we get them to you as a council? So that's kind of my first question.
we have a team working on this, and Jennifer is part of the team and some of her staff, so including our HR manager as well. So we have a good grip on it. I do appreciate your offer for sure. I think at this point, we want to get this done expediently. Our staff has been waiting for a long time.
Understood.
And I think we have the right people on the job to do a good job for you.
Okay, and that actually is not the best answer, but I accept it because, again, I recognize the value of everyone's time, and there are literally, AI out there that can help with that process. With that said, would you now move, if you wouldn't mind, to the cities that you came up with? So the 10 cities that came up, and kind of want to build upon this idea, which is I believe these are at least a handful of new cities to us. I've seen a list like this produced before, but I don't believe these were the same cities. So I guess I should ask the council if they agree that these are new cities to us before I make this grandiose statement. So,
yes, and on page 3 of your council memo, I listed the previous cities for you if you want to look back.
Nicely played, calling me out for not reading to see
No,
that it
I'm
was
sorry.
already. No,
I just wanted it to be handy.
They all blend together.
No, I didn't read it. That's what it came down to. Touche. That said, the next comment's going to be even funnier, which is my understanding of getting from good to great is telling your story. And that said, I suspect there are a lot of cities that could benefit from learning what you have collectively gone through. And so if this is not already on the docket for a proposal at some point at one of these conferences, I would sincerely recommend that you consider that. this, again, the fact that you can't, we paid someone who, they didn't do a lazy, they did the standard. But we're seeing the standard is no longer acceptable. You really need to be able to delve deeper. So it's not to make their product better, but it is to make sure that other cities recognize there's ways in which to do this so that at the end of it all, as Councilmember Sonmore says, we're not trying to not pay our people, but we want to make sure that we're paying them respectfully here. And that might mean you have to come up with a new set of, principle people that you're bouncing here's our definition, what's your definition, comparables. So again, just kind of wanted to point out that this seems not necessarily cutting edge, but definitely worthy of a topic when I have gone to the conferences of what I have heard. And again, in the spirit of going from good to great, telling your story is part of that. And this is an incredible city, so let's start telling that story.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I guess not. Excuse me. So we just go on to step 2
Yes,
later on, huh?
Thank you for your feedback. I appreciate it.
Okay. So now we're on to the council liaison reports, and which way should I go first? I think I'll start with Councilmember Payne Donovan.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just going back 2 weeks, just perusing my calendar here. Pardon me while I get my act together. I think the highlights of the last 2 weeks were last week's special alert training here before our work session. Also, last Friday, rather, you and I had a chance to attend the Seashore Transportation Forum, where we heard some rather interesting presentations from Metro and, I guess 2 different parts of King County Metro.
Right.
I'll let you follow up on that. And then I think that's it for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next will be Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. July 18th, Tuesday, attended the Arts Commission meeting where they're slowly still working to get ready for the September Arts of the Terrace, which the artist deadline, as was mentioned, was in August, Friday the 18th, to submit your work. This is a juried art show, so it could be accepted or not accepted. Some people aren't quite sure what juried art show means, but I wanted to clarify that. And then the 21st of July was the Tour de Terrace Parade. Thank you all the council members for being here and going in those very nice Chevy Corvettes provided by it's called the Seattle Corvette Marquee Club, but they're out of Kirkland. Pardon me. And then Tuesday, August 1st, I attended the National Night Out. And then I was at the work study session on the 3rd. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, do you want to add to yours, Councilmember Payne?
Mayor, thank you. I missed something because my internet wasn't up to snuff, but back on July 20th, had a chance to attend, along with Councilmember Wall and Murray, the Snohomish County Cities meeting, which I found rather informative. We had a presentation from the Association of Washington Cities, state legislative advocate, as well as a presentation from the Snohomish County prosecutor, which was super informative to me. She outlined a number of things that wouldn't have been aware of otherwise. So just want to put a pitch into those meetings. Appreciated also meeting our colleagues from around the county. So there you go. My report is now complete. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you missed through the Terrace's parade. And you were in a car.
Yeah, Rick got me there.
Okay, shall we move on to Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor. I always appreciate the opportunity to not go first because I oftentimes am adding to my list as we go. So I did not ask Snohomish County City is on my list for my report tonight. So I like not going first. Thank you, Mayor. All right, so back on July 19th, we had our monthly Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission meeting. It was our first meeting with our new commissioners, which was really great. So we had 3 of our 4 new appointees who we got to welcome. We got to welcome Kermit Appio, Scott Matsuda, and Teresa Courtney all joined us, and it was really, really great. We had Carolyn who joined us and appreciated her doing a really great presentation on kind of an intro to the city and to board responsibilities. It was their orientation, which I learned things as a council member, and I'm excited about this continued, I'm excited about this new emphasis on, helping to ensure that both us as a council and that our commissioners are really set up for success. And I thought it was a really powerful tool in understanding the pieces that they are going to impact through the work that they do, and just the community with which we all live in. And so I'm excited about other uses for that, and we've talked a little bit about that. But I think oftentimes one of the biggest barriers to participation and engagement is just understanding, right? And I think there is such a critical, lack of understanding about what we do here at a city level, and it makes it difficult sometimes for our folks to navigate because they don't know who to go to or what we do, and it makes it really hard if they're trying to affect change or provide input. And so I thought that was a really great. I appreciated all of the work that went into that, and I thought it was a really great example of some of the really neat things that city staff are doing. So appreciated that and appreciated setting up our commissioners for success as part of that meeting. And then we also had a really great overview of our city comprehensive planning process. So Christy and Jonathan came in and did a really good job of walking them through that process, getting feedback from them. And I thought it was very similar to the presentation we had already had as council, but I thought it was a really good opportunity to ensure that they understood that critical process. And again, the opportunities for people to plug in for that and for them as either both commissioners and to support our community in plugging into that process were things that we talked about. And so, I will name, and I think we've talked about it here, but, we have the visioning survey that's out there right now, and we had lots of our commissioners who are out at other events, I think, talking about the work that they're doing and that survey as well. But it was a good meeting. Oh, good. I didn't let it die before I went to the next thing. So that was highlights from that meeting. On the 20th, we attended the Snohomish County Cities meeting, and Councilmember Payne Donovan did a good job of sharing that. I got to sit with some of our colleagues from Edmonds, and I got to talk to, it was the day after they had announced this cool new protected bike paths project that they are talking about over there, and got to advocate for making sure it connects to Mountlake Terrace, so maybe our folks can get there and their folks can get here. But those are always, I think, great meetings to learn about what our colleagues in other communities are doing and learn from folks across the county. Tour de Terrace was a phenomenal weekend from my perspective and my experiences. I both enjoyed being in the parade and appreciate Councilmember Ryan ensuring that we were able to do so, and that we had, we appreciated the Corvette Club for driving us. It was fun. It was neat to see how engaged folks were on the sidelines of the parade and how many people were there and just how positive people are. I love our community, and I think these opportunities, there were so many people that were excited to say hello, that were, it was great. I loved it, and I really appreciated all of the work that went into putting it on, both from the city perspective as well as folks involved in Tour de Terrace and the Smith family. So enjoyed that, and then appreciated the opportunity to connect with folks at the Pancake Breakfast and at the Beer Garden and all sorts of other places throughout the weekend. On the 3rd, we had a safety training in our work session. I appreciated the opportunity to reground in fundamentals around safety. And so really, again, appreciated, city staff putting that together for us and carving out time to ensure that we, keep those things top of mind. It was a good reminder that it's just something we need to do and we need to think about. And I thought that was a great and informative session. On the 1st was National Night Out. And again, these opportunities to come together as a community, I think particularly after the last couple of years, feel different and they feel special and they feel important. And I am incredibly grateful for city staff for all of the work that they put into doing that. I loved the opportunity to, get folks water and chat with folks. I got a picture with Smokey Bear, not Smokey the Bear, but Smokey Bear this year, which was on my to-do list last year and I didn't get to. So I was very, very pumped about that. But it was a good, I will say, I would just name, we had a lot of service providers from around the community there. And so for folks who didn't have a chance to go, I think sometimes folks don't know what National Night Out is, and we do it a little bit differently here in Mountlake Terrace, but it was a really good opportunity to, I got to chat with Paws about what do we tell folks when they have a wounded, wildlife in their yard? Because that's, I feel like something we get asked a lot, right? And so, I got to talk to the people who do that work, and I got to talk to the, South County Fire folks, and I got to talk to Cocoon House that helps to, help, teens who are navigating homelessness. There was all sorts of good community programs there, a local food bank, et cetera. And so in addition to the delicious food and the good entertainment and the cornhole with cops, it was a good opportunity for learning as well as engagement. And that I think is it. Yeah, I'm going with that's it.
All right. And if you have more to add, you can always raise your hand.
I can keep talking, sorry.
Councilmember Sonmore.
Does it still work? Oh, I was enjoying listening to you talk, so you could have gone on. I too wanted to thank all the staff and everybody that helped for National Night Out. You mentioned Paws. I got to talk to Paws as well, and if they needed any towels or blankets, and you call first, which is good to know because I have some to donate, and that they're moving their wildlife up to Snohomish, I believe it was, and so now if you have a wildlife or if you have a hurt rabbit or squirrel, I guess you have to take it up there. I don't know if you can bring it to the one in Linwood or not, but Cocoon House, I had an in-depth conversation with them. So what I guess I'm getting at too is there was different booths this time that attracted different citizens to go see different things, and I really appreciated that. And then moreover, watching our staff and seeing how they function live, lifting kids up to the big truck, having our officers there, having staff serve the soda like you were doing. And so that was wonderful. I was glad to see we weren't using the stage because I know how cumbersome that can be. I'm sorry I didn't get on the dance floor, but it sure looked cool to me. But overall, that event, I started with that event in 1997. You've probably heard my story before, but it was just wonderful to see how it's grown and how it's kept. Some cities have separate, like cul-de-sacs do it, and so you go to different areas, and I guess a lot of people like that since maybe they can't drive or get out of their house or they want to meet their neighbors, but I think our event is great, and I know a lot of work goes into that, so please thank our staff for that. And then moving on to Terrace, just talking about the parade, I couldn't believe how long it went on for, but it went on, and I'm going to quote our former mayor, Jerry Smith, every time we'd go to DC or to Olympia or to an event or anything, he had this 6 degrees of separation, and it was always back to Mountlake Terrace. Oh, do you know anyone who lives in Mountlake Terrace? Do you know this? Well, so the Corvette driver is a retired engineer, or I'm sorry, he retired from the jail in Monroe, and now he works for St. Pius. and lovely man. So there was my 6 degrees, the separation back to Mountlake Terrace, and we had a lovely time chatting, and I always appreciate that, Rick, and all the work that you put into that. That was just a fun thing to do. And I hope our city manager and new assistant city manager had a good time with Terrace. So with that event, I was just going to go on to, I have 2 boards, and they're tomorrow, and that's Park and Rec and Left One, and then I think we have a future budget meeting coming up, and that's all I have to report.
Thank you. Councilmember Woodard.
Don't know why that caught me off guard. I thought you were going to double back to you. Thank you, Mayor. On the 18th, I had my one-on-one with our city manager. I always appreciate those times to get to know each other and to learn a little bit more about what's going on in the city. On the 19th, that next day, I had the opportunity to join the Linwood Chamber, and I only bring that into this space. I do that as a day job, but I bring that into this space just to remind us how excited I am that we have a chamber that we're investing in, that they can start doing these types of events. Because at this particular one, the reason I'm bringing it into this space as well is they highlighted Edmonds College. Of course, everybody knows my connection to Edmonds College, but a lot has happened and changed there. And it was just a wonderful, in my opinion, opportunity to bring the college and the business sector together to remind them how they can benefit from each other's existence. And just knowing that that's something our chamber is going to be doing is very exciting. That next couple days was the Tour de Terrace, so I'll keep mine short because I think it was some wonderful recounts of how that day went and how that weekend went. So I'll just say on that Friday, thank you, Councilmember Ryan, as well as thank you to my driver, Mike. I think Mike had the time of his life. He did not know what to do with me. And I just would say, if anybody's got footage, I would welcome that footage. That's right. I had a blast singing down Main Street, literally singing. That said, the next day, Saturday, I went the exact opposite. I spent all day looking at resources and helping people. So I spent the entire day, do you see my eyes go crazy on that one? The entire day in the carnival. And then I added to that with my family. We were able to donate tickets for our wristbands for a handful of families so they could join that as well. And when we get around to that next year, we'll present it as a new business to get back to what our former mayor apparently used to do. So what an honor to know that we had a system in place to get wristbands to these kids, because it's not cheap to go to the carnival. That said, I met a lot of wonderful young people, in particular on the Ferris wheel. They told me they might be listening. I met 3 nice little young folks, and they spent the rest of the Ferris wheel just calling my name, Steve. It was so embarrassing and awesome at the same time. So thanks for having a fun time, and I'd see them throughout the park, and it was just a great time. That said, moving on, that Sunday we did make it to the pancake feed, and I just want to encourage people to make that pancake feed. It is, not just a wonderful food, but a chance to do much of what you were hearing here. Just get to talk to your neighbors in a very much more low-key setting, and there's syrup. So just kind of putting that out there, that's a big part of the weekend experience as well. And thank you to the Smiths family for once again putting on an incredible event for their community, our community, but really the 3 of them doing the yeoman's work of all that. I do understand that we had a lot more volunteers this year, so I do thank all the volunteers who stepped up and were able to make this weekend a little less of a strain on them. And then I personally want to make sure we had our leadership here earlier, but to again thank our police officers. You heard a lot of that. Well, I will just tell you, when we get to new business, I'll share an idea, or at least a concern, where that Saturday night I was in that nonsensical fray of about way too many people in a very small space. Now, again, I'll share that in new business, but again, just thinking about how that was managed, I will say our police department did the best they could in above and beyond, I should say. I believe there was a foot chase at some point during this weekend. And then also just to that security firm. That was a big ask of any firm. And so I think you all did the best you could as well. But there's some things I think maybe the city can do in the future to maybe help everybody have a better time. That said, we moved forward to the next weekend, the 28th. I had the opportunity to speak at Evergreen Goodwill's 100th anniversary or birthday party, and so I had a chance to speak at the Everett site for a couple minutes as a distinguished guest. Appreciated that. That next morning, I was humbled and spent the day in the parking lot at Nubian Jam after spending quite a bit of time making sure we got people on site, which I would say we probably had about 2,000 people show up. I call that the Woodard effect, which is to say I was honored to be on the publicity and outreach team of the implementation team, but also honored to spend the day in the parking lot and all but counted those 2,000 people. That's why I'm saying. I'm telling you we had a lot more than what the papers are reporting. Just a wonderful event, and thank you to the city and our DEI for getting on board and being one of those sponsors. I, too, was at National Night Out. Always a wonderful time to be with our residents and neighbors. Sorry I had to duck out early. That said, I miss Smokey Bear, but I heard that he was quite the hit, including dancing on his way out the door, literally about that dance floor you were talking about, I heard about, which is another one of those. Anybody got footage of Smokey dancing? Please somehow make it its way to me. That said, I did have a chance to talk to Smokey's handlers, the U.S. Forest Service, and they mentioned, this is for my city clerk, our city clerk, that next year they're going to work on not only having Smokey, but perhaps having Woodsy Owl. How's that for an upgrade? That would be year 5. So apparently you hit year 5 and they think that you're serious about them. And so they start looking at giving you more resources. So next year, Smokey may have a buddy with him. And I also heard from Smokey that he was going to spend the year talking to a friend of his, through a friend of his, through a friend of his, to see if he can't get Doppler from the Seattle storm to perhaps make it to next year's National Night Out. More the merrier. Almost there. Last time we were together was the 3rd. That was a study session. I was able to make that as well. I'm sure everybody's going to amend their appointments or their reports now because everybody was at the study session. And then yesterday I had the honor of going to Edmonds College's Community Fair. Edmonds, the City of Edmonds Community Fair. I felt like they needed another word, so I'm just keep working until I can get it in there. Edmonds Community Fair. It was amazing, I thought. It's a wonderful use of time, and they had their city put that on. That might be just something that we think about doing. I believe the standard right now is Linwood's 44th Street Party, if you will, or whatever they actually call it. But Edmonds, I'm going to give you credit. You stepped up to the plate, and I haven't been to the 44th, so I can't really say it was better, but I do think that it was very well good use of time for a Sunday, and then just the resources that you put out in the community. Thank you for that. And just something for us as a city to think about as well, getting our types of resources in front of our people. And then last but not least, that same evening, I had the opportunity and encountered the mayor in the process of going down to Green Lake, from Hiroshima to Hope. They was their first year back after the hiatus. I thought that was an unbelievable amount of people there to show their respect. But I'll leave that to the mayor in her report, and that ends my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Wald.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the 20th, had the Snohomish County City's dinner where we focused on public safety. On then the 21st, the weekend, we had tour to Terrace. Appreciate again a great event for the community and all the work that went into it, and the Smith family and Councilmember Ryan for organizing the parade and everything, all the work that went into that. On the 26th, had the Snohomish County Tomorrow Steering Committee meeting where we approved the 2024 Snohomish County Tomorrow Dues Assessment, and we had a HASCO presentation. On the 27th, had the Puget Sound Regional Council Executive Board meeting where we had an update from the Equity Advisory Committee, also had an update on transportation safety and the climate. And then reviewed Puget Sound data trends. On the 1st, had the National Night Out and enjoyed that opportunity and appreciate all the work that went into that with city staff and all the great events, and it has been shared. It's just great community opportunity, and enjoyed having Smokey there as well, and getting a chance to say hi to Smokey. Looking forward to more of that and more company, I guess, that'll join hopefully Smokey in the future. On the 3rd, we had the council work session as well as the alert training. Appreciated that opportunity. And then on the 4th, had the Snohomish County City's Executive Board meeting where we discussed the dinner and then talking about future topics and dates. So just put on everybody's calendar, October 19th is the next dinner. Or the topic will be the comprehensive plan and updating and how we're the role of council members in making that all come together. We've also talked about, again, regional dinners, doing regional dinners. And so, for instance, here in South County, you might want to think about sponsoring the first one here in Mountlake Terrace. Then, I guess, in just talking about budget and organization and all of that fun stuff with the executive board. And then earlier today had our city manager meeting with the mayor and I, and that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. So on my report, I'm going to start at July 19th. I attended the DEIC meeting and personally got to meet all the members. And I think we're going to have a fresh start, and we're going to really get some things done there. On the 21st, I was in a Tour de Terrace parade in the convertible. That was an absolute amazing ride. And thank you, Rick, and everyone for putting that together. I know that every once in a while we end up with some great cars, and then some other years we kind of have to improvise in the past. So thank you very much. And then on that Saturday and Sunday, I spent a few hours in the booth in our city booth over at Tour de Terrace. And then on the 24th, I attended the Snohomish County Mayor's meeting, which is still on Zoom. So we can, because this is all the mayors from the whole county. And then on the 29th, I attended the Bethesda Church, this block party. And they really do put on a good party over there. And I don't know who else was there. I went there early and then had to leave, but I hope that other people showed up. They actually invested in a dance floor, so they have an actual dance floor. And so they're going to be doing a lot more dances in the future. On August 1st, I attended National Night Out, and yes, we do it differently in Mountlake Terrace, and we have a great turnout from the whole city. And we had a lot more booths this year than we normally do. And I saw that I went to the health board booth and saw 2 health board staff people that I work with when I was on the health board. So it was a great seeing them again. And then on the 2nd, I attended the South County Mayors, which is Snohomish County, South County. So it's like 5 or 6 of us. And we talk more about what we're doing and what we can do together in the South County area. And then on the 2nd, I went to, and the city manager was also there, to the South County Fires report on the townhouse fire. And I learned a lot about multifamily building construction, firewalls, and why some things can burn faster than others. And if you have a solid wood house with real wood furniture, it's going to burn a lot slower than the new furnitures we have now that are not real wood. So, and also, they really talked about smoke detectors, and so I ordered, because I found out that my just because your smoke detector has a brand new battery in it and it makes a sound, doesn't mean it's going to work. It just means that your battery works. So I have now 6 smoke detectors, and they're like 3 inches round. You can get these little smoke detectors, and you need to have 1 in every bedroom and 1 on every floor. Okay. And then on the 3rd, I attended the community transit meeting. And then on the 4th, I attended the Seashore Transportation Forum. And one of the things that Councilmember Payne Donovan was talking about was the metro, they call it something different from what we call our zip cars. But they have a Lyft Uber type service going on in King County too. Our zip cars with community transit is so successful that they are going to start expanding it to Darrington and Arlington and another place. And I'm thinking, huh? How about Mountlake Terrace and Edmonds and whatever, but still. So we're going to, and we, eventually I think we all will get it, but it's going to take a long time.
Mayor, could I real
Go ahead.
quickly tack on? I think what you're referencing is King County Metro's DART service, which is their dial-a-ride service, I believe, and they have a pilot that will serve parts of Lake Forest Park shoreline as well as Mountlake Terrace, which is terrific to understand given that we're across the county line up here, but along with their redistribution of services with Linwood Link light rail being opened, or their traditional bus routes, they'll Mountlake Terrace residents will have another option within that specific service area of that pilot. So hopefully, perhaps at some point, I know Metro has come before us in the past, I believe, or if not.
I thought they were coming.
Are they? Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll hear about it then, but it's something I'm happy to hear about, and hopefully we can get more info to our residents.
Yeah, I hope that people will realize that the transit companies are trying to cross the borders, because there's going to be one community transit line that comes in from Everett that is going to end at the 185th station in Shoreline. And then if that DART thing goes into Mountlake Terrace, that's crossing the line again. Because what I've mentioned in the past before, and a lot of people are still saying, is that we have this imaginary line, which is the King County, Snohomish County border. And in order to get from Shoreline to Linwood, it can take you half a day. And you have to change, because a service stops at the county line, and then you have to go someplace to get your next county bus someplace and catch that in. And so if we can just get something to just overlap a little bit, and I'm glad that this bus is going to go to the 185th Street station rather than just end at the Aurora Village station. So, and I think that's why I like Seashore Transportation, because I've really learned a lot about transportation through the 15 years that I've been going to that meeting. Let's see. And that is the end of my report. Oh, last night at the Hiroshima to Hope, I ran into some people that I thought I recognized, but they weren't who I thought they were. But they were waving to me because they were from Mountlake Terrace, and they said, "Oh, we see you all the time. We saw you in the parade. We saw you at National Night Out." So it's amazing. You run into people everywhere. All right, so then, let's see. Next is new business. Does anyone have any new business? It's Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we've heard enough, I think, tonight about Terrace, and I don't want to detract from how powerful it was, but the idea that I had was the city taking on the cost for fencing. And I will just keep it simple. Yes, I said fencing. Amusement parks have fences. I recognize that means potentially costs coming in or out. I'm not necessarily suggesting that. I'm just saying cutting down on all the ways in which you can access that space. It's all fine and dandy in the middle of the day, in the morning, but at night, I would just say that having been in the middle of that fray, which is what it was, just bodies moving regardless of what was getting run over or who was getting run over or interrupted, too many crisscrossing lines. It was unbelievable. That said, moments before all of that, I had a colleague who came down from Everett because I invited them in the sense of the advertising, who said, "What a wonderful experience. I thought this was going to be so small." And so I guess it's all about perspective, which is to say maybe 10, 15 minutes later, she had vacated the space, and then that group of testosterone and estrogen, quite frankly, because it was boys and girls, or young men and young women, using men and women lightly here, who were having the altercations, if you will, which then crowds this, ooh, ah, 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 and cameras get out, oh, whatever that goes culture-wise. So only way I thought around that was if you have some influence over who's coming in and coming out, or you lower your prices, because the other thing that I thought was, well, this is a lot of young people around a lot of fun things they can't afford, and so they're going to create their own entertainment. And nothing's more entertaining than pushing somebody to see what happens. I was a boy once myself. So that said, I would hope that we do take the comments that we heard today seriously, that we take the feedback that we've been hearing and take some of this burden off of the Smith family. I think it ruined their weekend. And to think that all the work that they put in, that at the end of it all, we have to do our part, which is be right. That's all we're asking, just be right. And I'm talking to you young folks specifically, be right. That's not asking that much. You know, some of you ran over your grandparents as far as I'm concerned, because they weren't your actual family, they were somebody's family. And that was no excuse for acting that way ever through time, especially now. So that said, if the city can do something, at least let's start with a tangible concept and then build out from there, which is maybe a different way to say let's figure out how to partner with the Tour de Terrace moving forward, because it's only going to grow. I do not want to downplay my colleague's point. This was amazing. It really was. It just had some moments that if we do not get in front of, or at least alongside and walk it with, it's not going to end well for us. So that's my new business to say, let's make this an official moving forward discussion, I guess, when we get closer to their planning phase, which is probably next week. As hard it is to put these things on.
I think that a lot of people don't realize how small the planning committee is for Tour de Terrace. So I think that I got the impression that they thought that it was a huge entity that puts on this fair. And so they should have a telephone number that goes, obviously, if you're going to have one printed, maybe it should be monitored a little bit more. But I know who runs it, but not everyone else does. I can go to Tour de Terrace and see who's working it and who I know is in charge, but not everyone else does. So anyone else for new business? Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to mention that it was mentioned sometime, I believe, last month, maybe we should take another look at our town center plan and or zoning. Specifically, it was mentioned, people were talking about wanting a grocery store, and we know the problems with that. And possibly more management of housing on our main street, something to think about. And also with that housing, take a look at what parking comes with the townhome or apartment. I know it's, we work to try to keep things affordable, what we call pencil in, yet there's going to be problems with parking as evidence from other cities around where they put in new apartments, and now the whole neighborhood's filled with cars parking because either there's no place to park or the establishment is charging $80 a month to park on where you live. So there's problems there. So I don't know if we want to think about in the future to, I know the mayor had mentioned this last month. I don't know if we want to think about an agenda to review our town center and maybe go through some pluses we really like about it, or anything that we could think about changing or anything like that. So that's just to let the council entertain that idea, because we keep talking about this, but we don't do anything about it. So who'd like to step up and
Isn't that a part of the comp
say if
plan?
they'd like to have this on the agenda or not?
Hey, Rick,
Thank you.
That's part of the comp plan update, so it can be talked about there. We could talk about it separately on the council if you want to.
When would you estimate the comp plan conversation would take place?
I'm looking at the city manager.
Yeah, so as far as the comp plan calendar of events, if you will, looking at recommendations that go through the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Group, and that will happen chapter by chapter, starting hopefully in October or November, maybe sooner, but we'll start there. The town center is part of the Comprehensive Plan zoning designation, so that would be part of that overall discussion. Could also be part of the housing element discussion, but we can line that out. I think after that, the recommendations will go to the Planning Commission, where each chapter, again, will be discussed in turn, and then finally a recommendation on to City Council. That will likely happen, and this is fingers crossed, but likely happen sometime around this time next year.
Okay.
May I? So do we want to wait a year to talk about it, or would we like it maybe this month or next month, or do we want to wait a year? Anyone else?
Well, I think go ahead. We can talk about it, but I don't think anything can, it still has to go through the comp plan.
Right, I just don't want to be behind the ball.
Okay, but maybe we can put it on the agenda just to get our viewpoints into the comp plan.
Sure. So what we can do, we're meeting tomorrow as a leadership team tomorrow morning, and we review our calendar for what's coming before council, over the next week, next month. We can find a spot that would fit, that's most appropriate within, say, the next 2 months, and provide you with that background information and facilitate a discussion. The timing will be interesting just because we're going to ask the advisory group and the planning commission to make a recommendation to you on this topic and other similar topics. So, but I still think it's important for you to have your viewpoints and have a discussion on parking in particular.
Councilmember Salmore?
Follow up with Councilman Ryan's concerns. I understand that the longer we wait, the changes will come. And what we've done in the past, too, that has worked well, is we could form a council committee, and, depending how you want to form it, but talk about the downtown and do an assessment of it. I think that might be something that might appease what Councilman Ryan's talking about, so we don't go on a long time, that we're capturing comments and concerns and a review of our last downtown plan, but something in that fashion where it would address, because a lot of times as a council, we used to take a bus out and go through our city, and we'd talk on the bus, and we'd see what was working and what's not, or we'd venture out to other cities. We went to Kirkland and all different places, and we'd talk there. And we just lately haven't had a lot of those conversations, and I think that's what Councilman Ryan's alluding to is, let's have some dialogue. Let's talk about what's working, what's not working in conjunction maybe, throughout the comp plan. So when something comes to us, or a builder comes to us during the comp plan and says, I want to build this here, it's, something that maybe you've thought about. I know we can't interact, but Councilman Ryan, is there something more that you were looking at? I'm just throwing out a suggestion that might talk about what we've talked about for years with the downtown of, making that one of our main priorities. And if we're going to make it a main priority, how are we keeping a vision on it and how are we seeing it? We meet with staff members to see what works well for them and what isn't working well. Do we talk about the planters on the corner? Do we talk about the beautiful flowers, by the way, that are downtown that I just ooh and ah over every time I drive down 236? I'm just opening some dialogue to see if that's what you were thinking about.
Go ahead.
That's part of it. I think I like the ideas that you're suggesting. That I know that we have citizens that are contacting us, whether we're out riding our bike or walking the dog or things like that, and they kind of want to know some things. And I don't want to just say, well, you got to wait for the comp plan. You know, I want to give them a little, you know, we're thinking about this, and we're wondering about that, we're talking, you know, because I know that many of you have had citizens ask you some questions, and the ones I already mentioned, the grocery store and the housing on Main Street, the parking on Main Street in the units and that kind of thing. So I just wanted to have a little bit more, yes, we've been talking about it and we're kind of getting ready for the comp plan and that kind of thing. Thank you.
Murray, do you want to go first?
Thank you for the conversation. I think it's a good one, and I guess I will play the, haven't been through the comprehensive planning process before, so I don't necessarily understand either how we've approached it in the past nor how we intend to fully this time, although I think we've gotten, some good kind of initial overviews of that. So I guess the question for city staff and maybe for Councilmember Ryan as well. I know I personally took the vision survey that is out there and advocated for everyone who I talked to at National Night Out to take the visioning survey. So if you haven't, folks listening out there, we have this great opportunity that city staff put together to share the things that you love about Mountlake Terrace, and more specifically the area of Mountlake Terrace you live in, as well as where you think that there's opportunity, where there's gaps. And I thought that that was a really interesting thing both to think about on a personal level, as well as I am fascinated and very excited to see what comes from that, to learn more about, because to Councilmember Ryan's point, I think we all hear different things, and I know that, those are not necessarily reflective of our community as a whole. And so, I guess I would love to understand what is the planned mechanism to share back that feedback, for maybe us to have conversation about that, to then inform that advisory commission. Maybe that would be helpful for us to have that conversation. I don't know if that's already the plan, maybe it is, but maybe having some of that conversation around what is the community saying, how does that align with kind of our thoughts and direction around where we might like to see this process go and that advisory committee go, and kind of marry those things together. And town center is a part of that, because I was going to say, I definitely included grocery store as one of my things that's a gap in my neighborhood as somebody who lives here in the town center. So I guess I'd be curious, maybe Jeff, if you could maybe speak to a little bit about kind of what the plans are for the results of that visioning, if we have one in place already.
Yeah. So just a little bit of background. When going through these comprehensive planning processes, gathering all the data, gathering opinions, feedback. Is it on? Yeah. Gathering data, feedback, opinions, surveys, the little boards where you put the colored sticky notes all over. All those types of things are gathered into a book that you will see, that you'll get a copy of, that's going to be about that thick by the end of it. And you'll get all of that feedback to peruse through as you consider the different options for what you want to adopt as the ultimate, or the final version of the comprehensive plan that will guide development for the next 20 years. Some other things are optional policies, policy statements that council can consider adopting as part of the comprehensive plan throughout whichever element we happen to be talking about at that time. And those policies guide the actual code writing that we adopt, or council adopts, as part of the municipal code that will produce the vision. Ideally, will produce the vision that the community has told us is through the comprehensive plan development. But yes, you will see all those all the background materials and see and hear all the opinions on everything from parking to levels of service standards for parks, to economic development incentives, what should we be pursuing, run the full gamut.
Thank you. And I guess just quick follow-up on that. So that kind of initial conversation around the results from that visioning survey, because I think that's has a deadline here sometime in the early fall. Mm-hmm. I guess, is that something we engage in, the plan is to engage in that sooner, or not until it's kind of worked its way through the advisory committee and the planning commission?
No, I think that council should see some of that, because what will happen is those opinions will guide some of the early stages of the development. And then you'll be able to see how it morphs over time as it runs through the planning advisory group and through the planning commission and also have your own, policy statements, opinions, positions on those things as it moves forward as well. It's just, for a process, I think it's important to have different lenses on it and different perspectives, and having the Planning Advisory Group and the Planning Commission share their own opinions and perspectives on that without necessarily knowing what the desired council outcome would be, because then that kind of shortcuts the process. Then why is it necessarily there? But for us to know what your opinions are, I think is very important, because we filter all that through those lenses and then produce a document at the end that everybody is comfortable with.
Super helpful to understand better. Thank you.
Councilmember Payne Donovan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll skip over some of the great points that Councilmember Murray made about our outreach effort, and I think, in the last month we've heard about that. The work that city staff and our the help we've retained to form that up for the outreach, to help set the comp plan update on its way. I certainly can commiserate with Councilmember Ryan's frustration here. Certainly, before I wound up here, I was involved in advocating for a number of different things, and having served on Planning Commission, been frustrated that we haven't moved further quicker. That said, I think we're in this sort of generational, if you will, sort of process of updating the comp plan, and want us to make sure we're not short-circuiting that. And I think updating the town center plan as well as the entire citywide comp plan is sorely needed, is long overdue, even with the 2017 town center plan update that that we did a few years back. I think we're going to keep learning, and I for one, I'm looking forward to that conversation. However, I don't want for us to put undue pressure or unreasonable timelines on staff, and absolutely encourage and want to sort of elevate or escalate even the conversation within community about what their top priorities are, because we are seeing projects vest under the 2017 town center plan, and those there will be lots of opinions about what those look like and what the impacts are, and this is the beginning of a lot of the large growth that this or that this city has been planning for since the first town center plan was arranged back when Sound Transit 2 had just passed the ballot. So there's a long time coming here, well before I moved to town or even graduated high school for that matter. And I think this is really a really important conversation. So just want to acknowledge that, and the growing pains are coming, and we're here to do that work. So appreciate the chance to comment.
Councilmember Salmore.
So I'm just going to debate it a little bit more, because I don't think Councilman Ryan, any of your questions have been answered. So maybe we talk about some of those questions. Why don't we have a grocery store? What properties do we have left? I know sometimes the comp plan isn't always what I think it should be, and it's a little bit different. Maybe this time we'll talk more about it, but in the past we used to have robocalls and different things that we do and have more surveys. I just hope we get enough information that comes back that we can ponder over and discuss, because a lot of times in the community you don't know what you can talk about, so you think, well, maybe if I talk about air quality, the council will approve air quality, and as we know, we don't have a lot of control over that. But I think what Councilman Ryan's talking about is just some general questions that we all might have about downtown, of what's developing, how many apartments are going to be built on the docket right now in the next 2 years, or just maybe a basic understanding of what's going on that you're hearing about. Is that getting closer? Because I think all the ideas were talked about and said are good, and it's good dialogue. And I think all of it plays an important role, but I was just coming back to Councilman Ryan's you have specific questions and you're trying to figure out how to get them all answered. Maybe that's something we could all put a list together and talk about at a meeting, or I'm trying to get to where I think you want to go in your dialogue and your questions that you're asking about. And I'm just wondering if we're even hitting the mark.
I think what everyone's saying is very valid, and I like it. I just kind of want to make sure that people are kind of thinking about this in the back of their mind. And I bring it up because we haven't really talked about it much. I don't want to ruin the process for the comp plan, but I want us to have some kind of little more answers for our public when we're out shopping at Albertsons or Safeway, and I'm buying some cheese, and someone comes up to me and goes, you know, what's going on down here, and how come we're doing this, and, you know, and I help them out a bit, but I just kind of want us to kind of think about that as we, I guess, go into this comp plan. But I guess I'd like it sooner than later, but we do have a process, and I don't want to ruin that. But I do want us to think about some things, because we mentioned it, but we didn't give any pros and cons, you know.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, first of all, I appreciate the interest in the comprehensive planning process and the need to be involved, and how anxious we all are to get started on this conversation. And
I don't know if we can do anything here.
Anyway, yeah, it is something that has been very frustrating for a lot of us in how long it's taking to get around to this, but we're finally getting there and moving forward, and we appreciate that. But I appreciate the thought behind Councilmember Ryan's the questions that he's raising and the issues, and I think that there's a process that we're going through, and how that plays into the role that the process plays in how we weigh in shaping the vision for where we want to go and how we want to get there. But there's also in the meantime, as you point out, I mean, this is a year and a half away from actual adoption, but there's a lot of questions that are being raised and information that we need to share with ourselves and with the public that just having some updates on would be helpful. For instance, development, just development activities and what's going on, where we are, and what economic development and development, we have those updates every once in a while. Having another update would be helpful. But also, we hear about the grocery store, and we all want the grocery store. But maybe it's a good idea to have an update, a public update about why there's a challenge and why it's not just happening. There's the market in play, there's our plans and the policies that we have in place that in some cases are hindering it. But there's the market, there's the number of rooftops. I mean, all of that would be information that would be helpful for us to just talk about and get out in the open, so that gets, and how that plays a role, having that information and how that plays a role in the comprehensive plan update process. So, I've been raising this flag about the update for years or for the last year and a half about why it's important to get started early so that we don't find ourselves behind the 8 ball. And sometimes I feel like it's been falling on deaf ears and nobody's paying attention. And now I'm seeing all this excitement about finally doing it, and we're moving forward, and it's great. But yeah, in the process of doing that, there are things that we don't want to get, we want to make sure we are updated and understand the process and what the challenges are, and the public understands what the challenges are and why we don't just have a grocery store, or why we need to make certain changes, or what changes need. And we're hearing right now about some of the developments that are occurring and some of the shortfalls in our policies that we're running into challenges with, because we had an idea of what we were adopting and what we thought we were doing, but we didn't quite cover it all in the actual language that we adopted, right? And so there are some of these things that we need to take a review and make sure we address, and knowing what those are would be helpful, I think, in maybe just having an update sometime in the next couple of months to have that discussion and understand what the challenges are and what we're up against and what we're trying to do and how we're going to get there in the future. So yes, let's do it. Let's have more conversation.
Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be quick, but just to build on what Mayor Pro Tem Wall was just saying, I think one of the things that I think it was Councilmember Woodard advocated for regularly for a long time was talking points around kind of, things, either events that are important or bodies of work that we're working on actively or things that we're regularly hearing about our community from. And I think to Councilmember Ryan's point, the grocery store is one that, particularly for those of us that, traverse this area, when we run into neighbors and folks who live in this area, they want to know about that. And so I think in addition to having some time to talk about it here in council, it would be really helpful if maybe, maybe we as council kind of narrow down what are the top 1 or 2 things in any given month that would be helpful for us that we're hearing from the community on, that we could have some kind of unified talking points on, so we can ensure that we're not only delivering the correct information to the community, but we're delivering that in a consistent way. I think that would potentially be a really helpful way to not only build on having the conversation here at council, but setting us up to have good conversations over cheese in the grocery store. So I don't know if that's possible, but that would be, I think, a really helpful add-on to that.
Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to publicly thank Councilmember Murray for saving me about 2 hours of reflection in the backyard of isn't this exactly what I've been saying for the last? So thank you. And then thank you, Councilmember Ryan, for also bringing it back in a different way so that we could have this discussion to get where we needed to get. So hopefully that's helpful for you all, because this is not about you all. This is something as a council we've been collectively seeking for a long time. We just find ourselves feeling like you might deliver. So that's where we find it right now.
Also, I think that a lot of us want things, but if it was economically feasible, it will be coming to us. So we have to figure out ways of getting that to happen. Just wanting it and complaining that we don't have it is not going to get us anywhere. We've got to start changing the policies and everything so that people will start coming. And because if you had the money, if you had $100 million right now, you can just build one, right? Anywhere you want to without looking at the economic consequences of anything. So I don't have that money. I can't build it myself.
Not what I heard.
Councilmember Woodard? Oh, okay. So we just have to work on making things easier.
Financing.
Finance.
And the role that financing plays in economic development.
Right.
You say so.
Money talks. All right, anyone, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, real quick, I just want to make sure we give, I think it's our CD folks, the website actually does have a decent, what's going on over on this street, and you can kind of pull up projects. I don't know how robust it is, but I do want to give them credit that I have looked to that when people have asked me directly, hey, what is that project? And I have no idea. I'm like, wait a minute, I might know the answer. So it has come in handy, so I do want to give you credit for thinking that far, and that is public facing.
All right, anyone else? Okay, so if there aren't anything else, I'm going to just adjourn the meeting. We're adjourned.
Record.